Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. Thank you for tuning in to the LO3 podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date is Thursday, June 4th, 2020. Yes, this is my second show for today. It's just one of those things, and I'm just like winging it little by little here. And I got like good responses too about the Florida semi-auto ban. Got scrapped in the Supreme Court. And of course, someone made me reminded me about the insufficient signatures, which is absolutely, I agree with that completely. So that, and of course, it contradicts the multiple sections of Article 1 Florida Constitution and Article 10, Section 2 of the same enactment on the militia. And someone made a claim too that they said the militia is considered illegal in Florida and paramilitary training. However, I might have to look at the statute. I've read it before, but it's more like overthrown and so forth. But the truth of the matter is, how does that supersede the militia and a constitutional perspective of the state of Florida? So that's essential to always look at everything too. And I'm not no condemnations, but I gotta say, when some of these people, I just did a Facebook post on that one under Florida Carry, and they always have good discussions with the people there. So they're good folks. They don't really do name calling and all that. Just share information, and that's essential to build a good dialogue. So yeah, just just been kicking back a little bit, and I was like loving when I hear the rant about Drew Brees' speech on disagreeing, not like criticizing the. When people disrespect the flag and the national anthem. And of course, everyone go on these little tirades. All these athletes and celebrities, they all believe their entitlements because he made a good, honorable speech about it. He has the right to constructively criticize, like everybody else. So, even it was LeBron James had a little tirade on that. So, I linked a little meme, him and Drew Brees, pertaining to free speech. To suppress free speech is a double wrong. It's not just for the hearer, but for the speaker as well. Frederick Douglass made that statement. Abolitionist around that time. So, hey, so you can't say I'm being racist, okay? That's null and void in my realm. So, it looks like, someone named George W. Bush wants to make his little statement on the whole horrific event that occurred with George Floyd. And looks like he wants to jump on the bandwagon and all that. So we're going to see what's the statement on this. I'm going to hit the New York Post. To be very frank, even though it came out a couple of days ago, around 6:43 p.m. by Bob Fredericks. George W. Bush on George Floyd's death. Racism. It's time to listen. Former President George W. Bush on Tuesday decried the brutal suffocation of a black man at the hands of Minneapolis cops, asserting that he and the ex-First Lady Laura Bush was disturbed by the injustice and fear that suffocate our country. The former president's statement was his first on the May 25th death of George Floyd, and he explained his reticence by saying this is not time to lecture, it's time to listen. Oh, really? But I'm just, I'm going to continue on. I'm not going to try to be critical at the moment. Bush then lambasted those who target the brutalized young African-American men and praised peaceful protesters seeking social justice. It remains a shocking failure that many African Americans, especially young African Americans, are harassed and threatened in their own country. Its strength when protesters protected by responsible law enforcement march for a better future. He asserted that the only way to end systemic racism was to listen to the voices of so many who are hunting and grieving. He lauded the heroes of America, political officials, and activists who led the fight against slavery, racism, and injustice, including Abraham Lincoln. I'm sorry about that, folks. If you really study about this man, he didn't give a damn about them. Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, and Martin Luther King Jr. Revealing the nation's disturbing history of bigotry and exploitation. Yeah, and Abraham Lincoln wanted to ship the blacks back to Africa or the West Indies, including, if you hear the country, Liberia. Look it up. Lincoln wanted to send the African black slaves to Liberia. Just look it up. Trust me on this, all right? The rule of law, he continued, depends on the fairness and legitimacy of the legal system, and asserted that Americans love our neighbors as ourselves, and we treat them as equals in both protection and compassion. The Republican ex-president did not mention President Trump or specifics regarding the lawsuits that has accompanied many of the demonstrations over Floyd's case across the USA. But his tone of conciliation contrasts sharply with the Commander-in-Chief's desire to use the U.S. military to quell the violent demonstrations like those that rocked New York City overnight. He also urged Americans to listen to the protesters and what they had to say instead of ignoring their concerns. Those who set out to silence those voices do not understand the meaning of America or how it becomes a better place, he added. Well, all I gotta say to you, George W. Bush, wear a muzzle, you Zionist, globalist hack. You're one of the greatest hypocrites right now on addressing tyranny, fighting tyranny. You're a fraud, you're a poser, you're a globalist butt boy. You have no merit in what you have to say. None at all. You little weasel. How dare you have the audacity to make those statements? Like you, sir, are responsible for illegal wars. Talk about the weapons of mass destruction, and you laughed about it. That's right. You laughed about it. But there's no weapons of mass destruction over here. You made a joke. Now your father's dead. You want everyone to repent. Want you to try to repent for your actions. Well, you got a lot of things to do. As far as I'm concerned, you should be tried for treason. You are a war criminal of one of many. You are the terrorist, sir. You should have never, ever addressed that. It's nothing more than blasphemous rhetoric. And I'm not the only one that makes this statement. Because here's the area we will talk about George W. Bush from Mises.org under their wire. The media has conveniently forgotten George W. Bush's many atrocities. Former President George W. Bush has returned to the spotlight to give moral guidance to America in these troubled times. In a statement released on Tuesday, Bush announced that he was anguished by the brutal suffocation of George Floyd and declared that lasting peace in our communities require truly equal justice. Rule of law ultimately depends on the fairness and legitimacy of the legal system, and achieving justice for all is a duty of all. Bush's declaration was greeted with thunderous applause by the usual suspects who portray him as the virtuous Republican in contrast to Trump. While the media portrays Bush's pious piffle as a visionary triumph of principle, Americans need to vividly recall the lies and atrocities that permeated his 8 years as president. In October 2017, speech in a national forum on liberty at the George W. Bush Institute in New York City, Bush bemoaned that our politics seems more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication. Coming from Bush, this has much credibility as former President Bill Clinton bewailing the decline of chastity. Most coverage of Bush nowadays either ignores the falsehoods he used to take America to war in Iraq or portrays him as a good man who received incorrect information, but Bush was lying from the get-go on Iraq and was determined to drag the nation into another Middle East war. From January 2003 onwards, Bush constantly portrayed the U.S. as an innocent victim of Saddam Hussein's intimate aggression and repeatedly claimed that war was being forced upon us. That was never the case, as the Center for Public Integrity reported. Bush made 232 false statements about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and another 28 false statements about Iraq's links to Al-Qaeda. As the lies by which he sold the Iraq war unraveled, Bush resorted to vilify critics as a traitor in a 2006 speech to the veterans of foreign wars. Bush's lies led to killing of more than 4,000 troops, and hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians. But since those folks are dead and gone anyhow, the media instead lauds Bush's selection to be in a Kennedy Center art show displaying his borderline primitive oil paintings. In February 2018, Bush was paid lavishly to give pro-democracy speech at a United Arab Emirates ruled by a notorious Arab dictatorship. He proclaimed, "Our democracy is only as good as the people trust the results." Another lie. We're a republic, stupid. He openly fretted about Russian meddling in the 2016 U.S. election. If it was Israel, you'll be licking the boots like you did with Benjamin Netanyahu and ADL, right, chump? But when he was president, Bush acted as if the United States were entitled to intervene in any foreign election he pleased. He boasted in 2005 that his administration had budgeted almost $5 billion for programs to support democratic change around the world, much of which was spent on tampering with foreign vote totals. When Iraq held elections in 2005, Bush approved a massive covert aid program for pro-American Iraqi parties. The Bush administration spent over $65 million to boost their favorite candidate in the 2004 Ukraine election. Yet, with boundless hypocrisy, Bush proclaimed that any Ukrainian election ought to be free from any foreign influence. U.S. government-financed organizations helped spur coups in Venezuela in 2002 and Haiti in 2004. But both nations, along with Ukraine, remain political train wrecks. In that October 2017 New York speech, Bush proclaimed, "No democracy pretends to be a tyranny." So dumbed down, do-lang. Exactly. But ravaging the Constitution was apparently part of his job description when he was president. Shortly after 9/11, Bush turned back the clock to before 12/15 when the Magna Carta was signed, formally suspended habeas corpus and claiming a prerogative to imprison indefinitely anyone he labeled a terrorist suspect. In 2002, Justice Department lawyers informed Bush that the president was entitled to violate the law during wartime, and on the war on terror was expected to continue indefinitely. In 2004, Bush White House counsel Alberto Gonzales, which they say he was a part of La Raza, Hispanic Ku Klux Klan group, formally asserted commander-in-chief override power, entitling presidents to ignore the Bill of Rights. Okay? Yep. Under Bush, the U.S. government embraced barbaric practices which did more to destroy America's morality credibility than of all of Trump's tweets combined. Bush's enhanced interrogation regime include endless high-volume repetition of a male-mixed cat food commercial at Guantanamo, head-slapping, waterboarding, exposure to frigid temperatures, and manacling for many hours in stressed positions. After the Supreme Court rebuffed some of Bush's power grabs in 2006, he pushed through Congress a bill that retroactively legalized torture, one of the worst legislative disgraces since the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. During his years in the White House, Bush perennially denied that he had approved torture. But in 2010, during the author to promote his new memoir, he bragged about approving waterboarding for terrorist suspects. Is Bush nominating himself to be the nation's racial healer? When he was president, Bush inflicted more financial ruin on blacks than any other president since Woodrow Wilson, who brought Jim Crow barbarities to the federal government. Bush trumpeted his plan to close the gap between the black and white ownership race and promised in 2002 to use the mighty muscle of the federal government to solve the problem. Bing! With my magic wand. Bing! Okay. Bush, and it says here, Bush was determined to end the bias against people who buy a home but had no money. Congress passed Bush's American Dream Down Payment Act in 2003, authorizing federal handouts to the first-time buyers of up to $10,000 or 6% of the home's purchase price. Bush also swayed Congress to permit the Federal Housing Administration to make no down payment loans to low-income Americans. Bush proclaimed core American values of individuality, thrift, responsibility, and self-reliance are embodied in home ownership. In Bush's eyes, self-reliance was so wonderful that the government should subsidize it. And it didn't matter whether recipients were creditworthy because politicians meant well. Bush's 2004 re-election campaign trumpeted his down payment giveaways, a shiny example of compassionate conservatism. Thanks in large part to his policies, minority households saw the fastest growth in home ownership leading up to 2007 recession. The housing collapse ravaged the net worth of black and Hispanic households. The implosion of the subprime leading market has left a scar on the finances of black Americans, one that not only has wiped out a generation of economic progress, but could leave them at a financial disadvantage for decades. The Washington Post reported in 2012, median net worth for Hispanic households declined by 66% between 2005 and 2009. That devastation was aptly described in a 2017 Federal Appeals Court dissenting opinions as wrecking ball benevolence, quoting a 2004 Barron's op-ed I wrote. But almost none of the media coverage of the ex-president reminds people of the economic carnage of this Bush vote buying binge. It is possible to condemn police brutality and, even more importantly, evil laws and judicial doctrines that enable police to tyrannize other Americans without any help from a demagogic ex-president who ravaged our rights, liberties, and peace. I also commented in the August 2003 USA Today op-ed whether Bush and his appointees will be held personally liable for their Iraq war falsehoods is a grave test for American democracy. The arrival of Bush's reputation vivifies how our political media system failed that test. As long as Bush doesn't turn himself in for committing war crimes, all of his talk about achieving justice for all is rubbish. Thank you, Mr. James Bovard. He is absolutely correct. Why listen to a two-faced demonad like Jorge Bush? That's right. Man's a contemptuous buffoon. A pig. Benedict Arnold was more of a man than him. Okay? I could rant and just bash him all night long, but I'll be digressing the hell out of you guys. And I'm not here to do that. It's called principles. We all have them. I know one thing. That douchebag never even read the 5,000 Year Leap. Good stuff, by the way. I'm reading on it during when I'm doing these shows. But one thing for sure, my friends, he is a terrorist. So you're with us, or you're with the terrorist? He's actually talking about himself and being the terrorist. So you know what? Don't fall for the hype. He's using you folks. He is the enemy of liberty for every single one of us, regardless what we look like. So you know what? You give him the big middle finger and tell him, wear a muzzle, Jorge, because you're contaminating space. And that is it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or if you're saying something interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please send your correspondence to Decorum. Then I will leave this on the footnotes of this article on my Spreaker page. I forgot to say this again from the last past show. If you want to donate, you can send your love at paypal.me/LokiLuck3. That's all together. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love. And may your guardian spirits be with you.